Okay. Had a question from Mark Payne, who is overseas online. Mark, thanks for your question. His question is dealing with the iPhone itself. His question was along the lines of iPhones many times don't need your antivirus, whereas the Androids do. Yes, most of the time when we take a look at the Apple iPhone, you do not need antivirus. The Apple iPhone is a more secure phone than the Android. I would suggest anybody with an Android, make sure that you get some good antivirus, anti-malware. So Norton makes some good stuff, McAfee makes some good stuff, WebRoot, pretty much all of them. And for those of you in the military, you want to make sure that you get the one from Kaspersky. Why? Those looks are like, no, we don't get Kaspersky. Why? Because Russians have made this and they might have backdoor access. You don't want to use Kaspersky. Kaspersky, although, is one of the best programs out there. They can also put software on your system, so don't use that. Use WebRoot, McAfee, Norton, any of the large names like that. With the Apple iPhone, there aren't too many antivirus softwares that are out there, but anytime you can add an antivirus, it does help because it is evaluating any traffic coming into your system. If you're using your system to connect out to the internet, if you're going out to hotspots all the time, always good to make sure that you've got some sort of antivirus or some sort of software firewall that's on your system. Continuing on with this chapter on password cracking, there's a lot of great tools out there for password cracking. Our passwords are going to be storing our operating systems are going to store our passwords as hash files. The idea is that we're storing this in a hash. It's a whole bunch of just what look like random characters, uppercase, lowercase, special characters, numbers, dollar signs. And so when we take a look at the hash, it's easy for me to copy the hash and run it through something like Cain and Abel, John the Ripper, Loftcrack, Offcrack. These are all great tools. What's going to happen is we do what's called a brute force attempt. It's going to start off by looking at all one character passwords. So it looks at one character, it creates the hash for it, says, does this match? Nope. So let's try the letter A. Nope. Try the letter B. Nope. C, D, E. It does about 5,000 of these per second. So it's trying all these different combinations of characters, trying to get this to figure out what your password is. So most people who have 5, 6, 7, 8 characters, if we were sitting on a Windows system and we were to break your password and you had 4 characters in your password, it's going to take 3 seconds to break it. If you have 5 characters, it's going to take 3 minutes to break it. If you have 6 characters, it's going to take me 3 hours to break it. If it's got 7 characters, it'll take 3 days. So you notice how this is exponentially going up. So after that, it's going to be 3 days to 3 weeks to 3 months to 3 years, and then it's just going to escalate even higher and quicker. So we start looking at the brute force. It's going to take a while to do that. Now, a lot of people want to use dictionary words for their password. In fact, it's very difficult for most people to come up with a good password. So, Mike, what do you use for coming up with your scheme? I don't want to know what your password is. What's your scheme for finding a good password?
I just kind of use
something around the house, something that you've seen, someplace you've been. Now, I go to Hawaii a lot, and I used to run dive boats over there, and it was always fun when you get some tourists over there asking, what kind of fish is that? Gray. Well, how about that? Oh, it's black. So the Hawaiians came up with an answer for the tourists, as we call them. More than one tourist. Well, you have opus and opi. You have octopus and octopi. You have tourist and turi. So multiple tourists are turi. So they had to come up with a way of explaining what that fish is. That's the Humahumanakunuku apua'a. That's the black one. I'm sorry, the gray one. The apu'ili is the black one. So those make great passwords. What'd you do? What's your new password? It's the Humahumanakunuku apu'ili. Where did you see it? I saw it Ulapalakua. Combine the two of those, it makes a great password. Look at your vacation. Where'd you go? What'd you do? What'd you see? This makes a wonderful password. It makes it more difficult because you're not going to find it in a dictionary. We're going to attempt to find your password in the dictionary. And then we're going to try a hybrid attack, so we're going to take all your characters. You might have the word password. How do we obfuscate the word password so that we can make it a hybrid attack? Capital P instead of a lowercase, the ampersand instead of an A, $, W0 RD. There's your password. Or you can put a capital D at the end and a capital P at the beginning. This is a way to do the hybrid attack. Okay, so it's going to take your dictionary words and start substituting. Could be a birthday attack. Now, if I were to take all of the hashes, let's say that I took an MD5 hash generator and I said, here's the input, the letter A, here's the hash. Here's the letter B, here's the hash. Let's try two characters. AA, the hash. AB, here's the hash. AC, AD, A. All the way through. Let's go to three characters. AAA, AAB, AAC, AAD. Let's go to four characters. AAAA, AAAB. Let's do this all the way up to 32 characters and list out all the hashes and what created the hash. Could I then take this whole thing and call it the rainbow table? Welcome to the rainbow table. Now, what the NSA and NIST noticed was the hash that most companies are using, most passwords are being hashed with something called MD5. MD5 was written by Ron Rivest at that little junior college place you were asking about called MIT. So Ron Rivest is one of the mathematics professors over there. You probably know him better as the R in RSA, which stands for Ravish, Shamir, and Edelman, the three mathematicians that Ron Rivest and Adi Shamir share an office. Leonard Edelman is right next door. So Ron Rivest came up with this MD5 hash. MD5 creates a hash that's 128 characters long. NIST and the NSA noticed when they created the rainbow table and said, go ahead and put this in alphabetical order. They indexed it with just the hashes. They noticed there were some hashes that had two different sets of inputs created the same hash. In some instances, there were three inputs that created the same hash. Sometimes there were 4 or 5 or 6 that created the same hash. This is known as a collision. We want to prevent the collision. So the birthday attack is finding the hash collisions that we have. So what we want to be able to do is come up with a new hashing algorithm to prevent collisions. So what did they come up with? They created one called the secure hash algorithm, or SHA. So they went from 128 bits to 160 bits and then did the same rainbow table and realized there's still collisions. Well, there's less collisions, but there's still collisions. Now what are you going to do? Make it bigger. Go to 512. Well, actually, they went to 256 first. Realized there's even more collisions. And then went to 512. Are there still collisions? So does that mean they're going to go to 1024 next? Yeah, they keep increasing the size of this. Many times, all we need to do is capture your hash, and we can go ahead and push that hash on out to somebody else. Eavesdropping. Many times we can listen in on a conversation that you're having. How easy is it for me to listen in on a phone conversation that you might be having at home? In the old days, if you had a landline, I could just simply go in with my butt set and go clip, clip, and I could listen to your conversation. Very easy to do. Nowadays, it's a little bit more difficult because you're speaking on a phone. Is there any way that I could listen to you through your window? How do I do that?
Through your window?
Yeah. What's that?
Put your ear on the window?
No, I don't have to do that.
Are you talking about the little...
In 1962, the FBI caught the Russians bouncing microwaves off the windows of the White House so they could listen to conversations. Does that mean we could do that to your neighbors and to your friends and to whoever else you want to listen to conversations on? What's that? As long as you're in the line of sight, yeah. So the van parked out in the street with the window down, yeah, they might be just pointing that over there and collecting your conversations. We can do this the same way as your traffic is moving. I can use something called Cain and Abel. I can also use Wireshark, and I can capture all the data going across your wire. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to put my network interface card in promiscuous mode, which means I'm no longer using my MAC address. I'm saying capture all traffic that's on my subnet and send it to me. So I can now watch all this traffic going across the wire. And I can capture all that traffic. Why would I want to do that? Why not? Isn't it fun to listen to people's conversations? If you've done it for a while, you just go, that's boring. Let's go find something else to do. So anyway, packet sniffing is an easy way to do this. We can circumvent the segmentation that you might have on your network. So if we've got different segments, if we've got different VLANs, we're going to talk about VLANs a little bit later on, but I could do that. In most cases, we want to capture plain text protocols. If you are encrypting your data, there's no way that we can actually read that data going across. So if we think about a telnet connection, if I'm telnetting into your server or into your router, your switch, your firewall, telnet's in clear text. So if I just put packet tracer on there, or if I can put Wireshark on there, I can capture all the traffic. But the moment that I go out to my bank and it's using an HTTPS, so HTTP with SSL, it's encrypting the tunnel. I can capture all that data going across the wire, and never once will you see my username or my password. I test this out when I go out to places like banks. I check it to make sure that, yes, in fact, that data is encrypted. So yes, when we have a plain text protocol, it's very easy for us to be able to do this. Man-in-the-middle attack. Well, I'm going to see if this will work. Up.
To start this nugget off, I thought I would show you how to do a man.
Yeah. I always love it. Anytime I bring a new program up here, I have to go back and tell it that so everybody can see it on the screen. They've set this up to do dual screens. So I have to tell it to extend the display, duplicate my displays, and then you guys can see what we're doing. So this is a man-in-the-middle attack. This is a guy named Jeremy. Jeremy was one of my instructors at one time, and he's given me permission to show this video to you. So this is a 5-minute video for man-in-the-middle.
Switch security discussions continue with IP source guard and dynamic.
You guys hear that okay?
To start this nugget off, I thought I would show you how to do a man-in-the-middle attack. I feel like in this series I've shown how to do more attacks than I have in any other CBT Nuggets series that I've created at CBT Nuggets. And do know that my heart in this is good, is to show you how easy this is to pull off so you don't make the same mistake that I did for years of just assuming that people are nice people and this must be, you have to have like those shady people that really know their stuff to do this. No, anybody can pull off a man-in-the-middle attack. What a man-in-the-middle attack is essentially a hacker, let's just say this intruder, injecting himself in the middle of a conversation between a computer or an entire network of computers. He can do it between one, he can do it between them all, and whatever destination they're trying to access. So the packets flow through him, let me go red here, packets flow through him like this, so he's able to open Wireshark and capture passwords, see everything that's going on. It's not a good thing. Cain Enable is your utility to do it. There are a lot of other nitty-gritty utilities that can get a lot more detailed than Cain Enable, but if you're looking for ease of use, Windows, this is it. So in the upper left-hand corner, I'm going to click on this Start-Stop Capture button, which essentially turns it into a Wireshark. It's starting to capture packets. Click over to the Sniffer tab, and let's just do a quick scan of the network. I'll scan the host in my subnet. Quick ping sweep, and it reveals these are the different devices that are currently existing on this. This is my house, so I may expose something here that I don't want to, and I'll see if I can blur it out in the video later. But nonetheless, this is the devices that I have running. I'm going to click on this APR, which is ARP poisoning. And you can see right here, it can actually go in and poison and capture a lot of the typically secure sessions. Now notice, these are things like SSH, HTTPS, remote desktop protocol, POP3 secure. How is it doing this? Well, again, it's putting itself in the middle and capturing the security certificates and decrypting it for the client. So it's not just talking about stuff that you type in clear text, although it does that quite well. So I'm going to click on APR, and let me just clear this off from previously. I'm going to go in here and click on the plus sign in this APR section, which says this will allow you to hijack IP traffic from selected hosts on the left. So I'm going to choose the default gateway and the host on the right. So I'm going to go on the right-hand side, and here are all the different client PCs that I have running in my house that it found during that little ping sweep right there, right? So click on that. It says, okay, I'm going to inject myself in the middle. Whenever you're ready, I'm going to say, I'm ready. Click that start, and that's it. That's it. I'm pulling off a man-in-the-middle attack by this guy responding to the ARP messages, essentially doing some ARP poisoning directed to each one of these. And notice it's saying I've got full routing going between this guy and this host out on the internet. Now, I'm going to come over here to my laptop over on the left and just go to Firefox. And comes up and it says, hey, I've actually captured the certificates for Firefox right now. And doesn't this creep you out? Like, this is, anybody can do this on your network if they pull this program out and start doing it. So it's capturing the certificates so it can start seeing what's going on. I'm going to click on this passwords tab at the bottom. It hasn't captured any passwords yet, but let me do this. I've got, I run voice over IP at my house. I'm going to click on an IP phone sitting next to me. I'm going to call my cell. All right, so I'm dialing my cell phone right now. Any moment. There we go. I'm going to answer the call. Hello, me. I'm talking to myself. Now, take a look down here. Notice it captured some SIP traffic. What is SIP? Session Initiation Protocol. That is the protocol that IP phones use to essentially register, and it's right here. It's seeing my home phone. It's seeing my fax number that are going and registering with the server. I can actually see what I'm scared as I'm looking at this. What hash it used as it was going to register, what server it's going to, and then you're ready to see something really scary? I click over on voice over IP. It's recording my call. I'm gonna hang up the call. Now again, I'm showing you this not to show you how to hack somebody's network and capture calls. I'm just showing you that we can go in and convert voice over IP calls to MP3 files, and nobody knows we're even doing it, right? It's capturing these things. I can now click on play and hear myself talking in the background on these voice over IP calls. Seriously, this is what you can do with a non-secure system, which every Cisco switch is out of the box. And I will tell you, I'll use the same thing I said for port security. Probably 90% of the networks I go in have no protection against something like this.
What'd you think? How easy was that? Took him 5 minutes to show you how to do it while he was talking about it. Normally it would only take him about 45 seconds just to do the whole thing, capture all your traffic, and say, done for the day. So when you take a look at this, I want to talk about two things he talked about at the end of the video. And the first was that 90% of the networks that he goes to have no protection against something like this. Very simple. If I'm on the same subnet as you, I can actually go and do this. The second thing he said that every single switch out of the box has no protection against something like this. A little bit later on, we're going to see port security that we can put on to our ports. That will protect you from doing something like this. So when we start taking a look at this, this is what we want to be able to keep someone from doing. Because if they can get into our network and do this, they can end up bringing our network down pretty quickly. So that is your man in the middle attack. And so very easily to pull this off. So again, Kane enable. Now, when you go out to Google and you type in Kane enable download, it'll take you out to oxit.it. When you take a look at it, the lower one is the one that you want, download. It's a freeware download. Their NSA is not checking to see who has this one, not like LOIC and HOIC. So if you were to download this You can start playing with it. You can use it to do the same thing that Jeremy did here to actually capture traffic. So again, remember, hacking is illegal. You can't go to jail for this. I have been to 17 of the finest jails in California to visit my old students. To visit some clients. So I'm always happy to come see. No, I'm just kidding. I used to work for a law firm at one time. I was going to become an attorney. So one of the tasks they gave me was, well, if you're going to be an attorney, we're public defenders, you get to go to all these prisons and visit our clientele. I don't like going to prison. It's the first thing a prisoner says when he sees you. Size jackets you wear. You know, I could just knock you over the head and trade clothes with you, and I could be out and you'd be stuck in here. And one guy offered me $100,000 to do that. And I went, so you're going to send me the $100,000 after you get out? He went, yeah. Yeah, right. I don't think that's going to happen. So you start thinking about some of these things. Be cautious if you're going to do this. Do this in a confined network inside of your own. Don't use these tools on the internet. Let's talk about wireless. How easy is it for you to capture wireless traffic? Well, it's very, very easy, because when we start thinking about wireless, what we have going on with wireless is that you could be sitting in a hotel somewhere. You could be sitting in the airport. You can actually grab tools like Cain and Abel's got a wireless portion to it. There's all these great tools. You were asking a little earlier about Backtrack and Kali. Both Kali and Backtrack have some great tools on there that allow us to be able to capture all of the wireless traffic that's going around through the ether. You can pull this out, and if you're good enough, you can actually break the passwords. You can capture passwords. There's a lot of things that we can do. So one of the ways that we used to do this in the old days was something called ward driving. We would get in our car and we would drive around looking for access points. When I was at the San Jose campus of Silicon Valley College, we ended up going to Cisco and driving around their campus looking for all of their access points. We found about 25 access points. Yes, sir.
We had a question overseas there. Shane Saunders asked, for man-in-the-middle attacks, does that apply to applications as well?
Yes.
Yes.
That's capturing the traffic in between.
Okay.
Thanks for the question, Shane. So yeah, when you start looking at ward driving, we don't do that anymore. We used to put in, with ward driving or with ward chalking, we used to put little signatures on the sidewalks to let you know where the access points are. Nowadays, you don't even have to do that. You can simply open up your computer and go, oh, here's all the access points in my area. I can connect into this one. So you can see the access points pretty easily. When we take a look at the way that we attack the encryption algorithms, let's jump back over to the whiteboard here. Let's see, interactive there and that one. There we go. Okay. Ron Rivest came up with something called, you don't want to work, do you? RC4. RC4 uses what is known as a 24-bit algorithm or initialization vector. Ron Rivest wrote this in 1997. Ron Rivest has an office mate by the name of Adi Shamir. Adi Shamir had a graduate student who looked at RC4 and how it was written. And he figured out how to break the algorithm. Ron Rivest had the RC4 picked up by the IEEE to be used in the web encryption algorithm. So the wired equivalent protocol has two different versions. It's got the 64-bit and the 128-bit. Both of these use the 24-bit initialization vector for our encryption. So Adi Shamir had a graduate student who, in the 2 weeks from the time Ron Rivest wrote this to the time it was accepted by the IEEE for use, figured out how to break the encryption algorithm. That was in 1997. So the moment it was released to the public, it was already doomed because somebody had broken the algorithm. What percentage of people still use RC4, or still use the web encryption algorithm on their access points? 40%. Why? This was broken 21 years ago. A lot of people go down and they buy their access point down at the Goodwill because somebody just donated it to Goodwill. Goodwill's not going to throw it away. Somebody buys it. They take it home. They go to use this without any consideration about updating the access point or the fact that this is not a secure protocol, but they just want to be able to get their kids on the internet so they can do their homework. So when we take a look at WEP and its 24-bit initialization vector, every single packet going out is going to get a different initialization vector. If I capture enough of these, I can break the encryption algorithm. So if I can capture, if I'm doing 64-bit, if I capture 300,000 packets, I can break it in less than a second. If I grab 1 million packets for the 28-bit, 128-bit, I can break that in less than 2 seconds. So if we start looking at this, how do we strengthen this? We don't use a 24-bit initialization vector. We're going to increase the strength of this by making it 48-bit. So this would be what WPA has done, is that they increased the initialization vector to 48-bit. So they didn't just double it. If they doubled it, they would have gone to 25 bits, and then to 26 would double it again, 27 again. So when we take a look at the way that WPA has done this, they've moved it up to 48 bits, but WPA has been broken as well. Usually you're going to use some sort of a dictionary attack on this to be able to break this. So the next one was WPA2. WPA2 simply said, let's encrypt this with something called AES. What is AES? This is the new encryption standard that was picked up by NIST and the NSA back in 2000 for any unclassified information that we have. So yes, it is pretty good. According to NIST and the NSA, to break AES 128, because it does use the 128, there's 3 versions, 128, 192, and 256. To break the 128, according to NIST and the NSA, it will take 176 trillion years. Will I be around in 176 trillion years, still teaching security classes? Okay, here we are doing Security Plus. By that time, it'll be up to number, 1,247. Because I started when Sec Plus didn't even have a number. So then they came out with 101, now we're up to 501. So when we think about AES, this is a good encryption algorithm. The best thing you can do if you're going to use any sort of wireless, make sure that you're using WPA2. Now, WPA2 has been broken. Yes, a year ago, October, somebody broke the 4-way handshake that goes on with this. So if you encrypt your data, however, it's still secure. So anytime you think about using something like this, you want to make sure that you are encrypting your data. So let's see, lectern and that one. Hey, I'm starting to get this thing down. So when we take a look at the wireless attacks, there are several ways we can do this. The WPA2 is using something called TKIP, which is the Temporal Key Initialization Protocol. The one thing you do not yet want to use is WPS, which is the Wi-Fi protected setup. It is not secure. So WPS is not secure. Never use that. So some of the things that people do to break wireless is they put out rogue access points. So I'm going to put out a rogue access point to try to get somebody to connect into the access point. If I was at LAX and I wanted someone to connect into the access point that I have, what would I put on the access point as the name of the access point to get people to connect to me? Free LAX Wi-Fi. And actually that's what it's named. How about if I put in free LAX underscore Wi-Fi or free underscore LAX Wi-Fi? That is a rogue access point. So it's almost like an evil twin because somebody wants you to log into that and they're going to use that as a man-in-the-middle attack to find your credentials going through. Now, Kali and Linux have a tool on them that will allow me to disassociate you with your access point. Why would I want to do this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to capture your connection to the access point. I'm going to find your MAC address. Why do I want to do this? Because many times when you're setting up wireless, they're doing it for MAC address filtering. Oh, we're only going to let this MAC address connect to us. So if I can capture your MAC address, I'm going to go find the tool SMAC. I'm going to change my MAC address to be identical to yours. I'm then going to disassociate you from the access point by dropping your connection. Then I'm going to come right back in as you with your MAC address. Very simple to do something like this. So that way I can now become you. I can log on to the network and go ahead and replay your system, and I can come right back in as you. So this would be one of the ways that I can get into your system. We can also jam the signal. In jamming the signal, I'm going to put in some radio interference. When we look at wireless, there's two different frequencies that we use for wireless. What are the two frequencies? 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So if I have a jamming radio, I can go ahead and set it for that frequency, and nobody can use wireless at that frequency. There are two terms here that you need to know for the exam if you're planning on taking or practicing some tests for the exam. Bluejacking and blue snarfing. Let's begin with blue snarfing. Snarfing is to take. If I'm snarfing from you, I'm stealing from you. So I am stealing your information. Bluejacking, I'm going to push information out to your computer. Okay? So bluejacking is sending unsolicited messages, where blue snarfing is stealing what you have. On the other hand, I could sweep in close to your phone, and I can use the near-field communication just to swipe in next to your phone and steal anything that might be coming out of your phone with NFC. You can turn off near-field communication on your phone as well. One of the biggest problems that we have out there is something called RFID. What is RFID? It's a radio frequency identifier. Does your CAC have an RFID chip in it? Does my passport have an RFID chip in it? Yeah, it does. I was doing a CISSP class. One of my students went home for lunch, and he comes back from lunch and he brings his next door neighbor with him. Next door neighbor's standing at the door. And he looks in my classroom and he goes, "Is Eric Lefevre in here?" I'm like, yeah. He said, "Does your passport end in 3535? And I'm like, "Who are you?" As he starts to step in, I notice a little badge right there that says FBI, and I went, uh-oh. Who did I piss off? What did I do? He went, "Oh, no, it's okay." I said, "Did I do something wrong overseas?" And he goes, "No." He said, "Your passport has an RFID chip in it." He said, "But I'm noticing something else in here. You also have something else. This is my captain's license. So my captain's license also has an RFID chip in it." So they changed it from a paper license to this because they wanted to be able to track where we are. So the gentleman came in because he wanted to point out that what I want to get is one of these little pouches. So this is going to block the RFID coming out of my passport. So he brings this little box over, and he has it right next to me, and I can read my passport. I can see my name. I can see my passport number. So he hands me this little pouch, and then we put in both of these, and as I open this up, I can see my things. If I do that, I can't see it. He said, my neighbor and I talked, and he said I should come in and show you one of these. He said, when you are over in Germany, when you're in Italy, when you're in South Korea, make sure your passport's inside of the pouch. Because somebody can walk down your hallway of your hotel with this little black box and tell the Swedes are in room 1. We have some German people in room 2. We have somebody from Mexico City in room 3. And here's Eric the American in room 4. That's the guy that we're going after. Why? Because somebody's going to pay a ransom for him. So he said it's a great way of being able to protect yourself. Your credit cards also have an RFID chip in there. So I was asked to go out and teach a class at the University of Michigan. Great little place. They're one of the hubs for the ARPANET and DARPANET when it first came out. And that's what I was teaching, was Cisco stuff. And as I'm flying out there, they had booked me into a Delta flight or American, I can't remember which. I hate both of them. So neither one stands out in my mind as to where the story came from. I hate it because they don't give you an assigned seat until you're at the very end, so they gave me the little tiny seat in the middle. So I'm sitting there, and the lady to my left grabs the flight attendant as she goes by and says, "Hey, my bag is not on the plane." I'm like, "You're away from the window. You can't even see where they're loading. How do you know your bag's not here?" She goes, "I have the app." What the heck are you talking about? They apparently now put an RFID chip in your luggage tag. And she goes, when you check in your bag, they go ahead and synchronize it to your phone app. And I'm sitting here, and I can see my bag is in the warehouse over there. So she grabs the flight attendant and stops her and says, "We can't leave till you put my bag on the plane." I have never seen this before. So she goes, "Look, it's moving." And here it comes, and it goes right underneath. You can see the plane in the app as well. Here it comes, goes underneath, the thing goes away, and I said, "There it is. That is amazing." So when we fly in, she's standing there next to me in the baggage area, and she shows me the app, and she goes, "Oh, it's moving. That means it's come off the plane, and here comes, here we can hear it coming through." And I'm watching this in real time. I went, "That is so cool." United has not done this. Southwest has not done this. No matter how many times I talk to them, "Guys, this is the best way." United has lost my luggage 4 out of the last 7 flights. Not lost it, but, left it behind. When they leave my luggage behind, what am I supposed to do? I have to go buy new luggage, or new clothes and new shoes, and send them the bill, and they reimburse me. And then, of course, for the inconvenience, they give me an extra $300. Oh, darn. I wonder what I can use that for. Vacation, maybe? That's what I'm using it for. So you start thinking about the RFID chip and what can happen with that RFID chip. We can track a lot of things. Your credit card now has an RFID chip on it. If you take a chance to go out to that, or take the time to go out and watch that video on the Tiger team, one of the things they do is they swoop up behind the owner and they scan his wallet. And they pick up the RFID chip off of his badge to get him into his office. So you start thinking about where we're going with technology. This is one of the concerns that we have. Okay, we got a couple questions here. Your first question: complex passwords that are combinations of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and special characters protect your system from which type attacks? Choose all that apply. So the brute force and the dictionary would be the two that it protects against. Yep. As a user, what could you do to protect yourself from a man-in-the-middle attack? Never connect to the internet again? That works. I like that. So really the thing that you want to do is avoid connecting to any open Wi-Fi routers. Because when you're coming into an open Wi-Fi router, somebody can capture your information and read that information. What tools allow amplification of a denial of service attack? Botnets are one. Reflection would be another. And malformed packets. Those are the 3 ways we can amplify the attacker's network resources. Evil twins are mostly used as part of what kind of an attack? So if I've got an evil twin, I've got a replica of the name of your business's access point because I want to capture traffic going through it. No, that's more of a man in the middle. So I'm capturing that traffic. I want to see what traffic you got going across. So that's going to be my man-in-the-middle attack. What kind of an attack is against a software vulnerability which has yet to be patched? That is my 0-day attack because we do not know anything about that. So let's take a look at some of the application attacks that we have out there. We're going to take a look at application vulnerabilities, how application attacks will do damage to your system. We're going to talk about server-side injection attacks and client-side attacks that are out there. So let's begin with an application attack. If I can exploit your applications that you're running, one of the easiest ways to do this is something called a privilege escalation. So what I want to do is I want to come in and connect into you I want to come in as you on your system, but then I want to escalate my privileges. What are the privileges I want on a Windows system? Admin. What do I want on a Linux system? I want the sudo group. So I want to be in there as the supervisor and take over your system. So I want that super user if I can get in and become that. So anytime I can do a privilege escalation, it's going to give me access to your full network. Directory traversal. Anybody here ever gone out to an FTP site? Got to an FTP site to download something? A lot of times when I go to teach a class, they'll give me access to an FTP site and they'll say, here's your tools for the class. And up at the top of the directory, I'm going to see these double dots up there. What are those two dots up there? That's going to be the parent directory. If I go to the parent directory, up above that will be two dots. What's that? It's parent directory. Well, if I go into your web page, if I go into www.departmentofdefense.gov/... I'm saying let's go up in directories that don't exist. What's going to happen to that web page when I do a directory traversal attack? Boom, I'm going to bring down your web page. So when I was teaching the intrusion detection classes for Cisco, one of the things they put in the IDS class was in big bold around a big square, do not do the following. Do not type in www.cisco.com /... So what did 12 of my 16 students do? They typed it in. They brought down Cisco's web page for 45 minutes. Then launched it again after lunch for another 45 minutes. When I came into the training facility the next morning, there was a little note for me from Cisco, which basically said what? Why are you allowing your students to do a denial of service on our website? I said, who in their right mind will be stupid enough to put a command like that out there and just tell a bunch of 18 to 24-year-olds don't do this? What are they going to do? They're going to do it. Only an idiot would have written that down in their book. They went, what'd you just call us? I'm sorry. A misguided individual would put that in their book. So the next day I come in, I'm now asked to phone somebody at Cisco to talk to them about this because once again my students decided this is fun. And I said very politely, if you knew this was a problem, first off, why would you put it in your book? But secondly, wouldn't you have your router protect against this and block that type of traffic? And they went, well, that's coming in the next couple weeks. So in the meantime, I went, hey, it's the last day of class. They're not going to be doing it anymore. And they went, your CCSI, your Cisco instructor's number is in jeopardy right now because you're letting your students do this. And I said, you put it in the book. There's no way I could block them from doing it in class, nor could I block them from taking that home and doing it from there. So when you want to go after somebody, look in the mirror next time before you go after somebody. And they went, oh. So after that, there was no issue, no problem, because the next set of books they had coming out did not have that command in there. So directory traversal is saying I want to go after those additional folders that are on my target system. It could be an arbitrary code execution running malicious code on a target system. If I can get into your system, I can push some code out to you and try to run it, which may get me to the back end of your system, or it may just be a denial of service and crash your system. Could be a resource exhaustion. I'm going to start sending you a whole bunch of stuff, trying to use up all your resources. If I can do that, I can cause your system to reboot, which means that you've just lost any data that you might have on your system. We can go in and alter the headers in your web page. So we can change the values in the headers used by any communication protocol. So by doing this, there's all sorts of different things that we can do. There's memory manipulation, sending inputs that affect the variables and other values. So anytime we've got an inputted area, please enter your username or your password. I can go in and start typing in Eric, space, 1 = 1, start putting some coding at the end of that. They can launch the coding at the end if you haven't done an evaluation of the commands that were put into the input area. So this would be one of the ways that we can do this. Could be an injection, sending a specially formatted input. So if I'm going into the web pages for Marriott, I can put 1 = 1, which means true for the database that's on the back end. So if I put in 1 = 1 for the username and 1 = 1 for the password, it's going to show me everybody's entries in all of that database. Why would I want to get into the Marriott database? What's it got in there? All the guest information, all their credit cards, addresses, account numbers, and points. Could I then get into their account and transfer all their points over to me? What would I do with 70 million points? I would never, ever have to pay rent again or a mortgage payment. What would I be doing? Traveling from hotel to hotel using my points. I think it would take me about 16 lifetimes to use that many points. I'd be inviting all my students over to Hawaii. Let's have a party. Got the whole hotel. Say, what? So just wait for that invitation to come in the mail. So this will be one of the things that we can do. I will tell you a quick story about one of the injection attacks that you might like. Anybody heard of a company called Ashley Madison? How do you know about this? It was what? Oh, it was on the news. Who else said they knew about it? What is Ashley Madison? It's a cheating website. Oh, yeah. So what was the little tagline that Ashley Madison had? Life is short, have an affair. What a great little tagline. So the story that I read, this guy gets home from work early. His wife's in the shower. She's getting ready to go out on the evening town with her friends, her girlfriends. The husband comes home, he goes in, grabs a beer, sits down on the couch, and he sees her computer sitting there with an open page from a guy, Mark, from ashleymadison.com. And it says, honey, I cannot wait to see you again. Last time was great. Let's repeat what we did before. He's looking at this going, she doesn't have any girlfriends named Mark. What the heck's going on here? So she closes out her laptop and she leaves. He goes back in, grabs another beer, opens her laptop, gets into it, starts checking her emails, and notices there's a lot of connections from ashleymadison.com. He starts looking at these web pages and sees what's going on. He's like, wow. So then he decides, well, you know, there's a way that I can get into this. So he goes to the Ashley Madison website where it says, please put in your username and password. So the first thing he does is he looks at mark@ashleymadison.com. And he goes out to Google and he tries all these different passwords in the top 25 passwords. He gets to the third one, which is 1111, hits enter, and boom, he's in. Wow. So he's doing this with a couple of the people that his wife has been dating because he wanted to see who else these guys have been dating. You know, these guys have been dating other ladies in the area. So he then gets this idea that maybe I could try this injection. I could put in under the username 1 = 1, which means true for a database. And under the password, what was he going to put in? 1 = 1. True and true then listed out for him every member of Ashley Madison. Now that he has the entire database, what's he going to do with it? He copied it, put it on his computer. He subtracted one name from it. Whose name? His wife's. And then he published it out there on the internet. Whose names were on this? Congressmen, congresswomen, judges, members of Congress. Senators, let's see, governors were on there. So this caused a huge ripple in the industry of, oh, wow, look at all these people having affairs out there. So a lot of their spouses, of course, were dumbfounded. Really? You were going out on me? That's not good. So when we start looking at injection attacks, this is one of the things that we look at. When we look at the memory vulnerabilities of buffer overflow, if I were able to have internet access right now, I would take you to the web page for the Marriott. If I'm not trying to break into their username and password and say I don't have an account, the first thing I'd put you into is first name. I'm going to type in and type in and type in. I'm going to type in way beyond 20 characters. It's going to let me keep typing, but it's not going to accept any more than 20 characters. Why is that? When the program was built, it was built with only 20 characters in the buffer, which means it will only accept 20 characters. You can keep typing all day long, but we can't put anything else in there. So a buffer overflow is sending too much information into that inputted area. If the programmer did this right, they would look at it and say, you know what? You can't put more than 20 characters. We will accept 20 characters, and that's it. No more than 20 characters. So that's where the buffer overflow comes in if somebody hasn't taken care of what happens after we put in more than 20 characters. The integer overflow, setting the integer value to a value that exceeds the maximum size to store it. So it may be that the maximum size is going to be 666. You can't put in any combination of numbers that will get you higher than that. So you start off by putting in 999. It should pop up and go, I'm sorry, you can't do that. That's an integer overflow. So we want to make sure that that integer value is left at a certain, between this characters, between this size and, between 0 and 666, nothing outside of that range. Could be a point difference, a point, or direct retrieve value it points to. So many times what we're doing is we're pointing back over to a value that's sitting in some other location. I would need to know the address of that location to be able to point to it. This next portion, we were talking about DISA a little earlier. I had a student in my class, probably in the last year, who works for DISA. He writes web pages for DISA. We were talking about ActiveX and Java. A lot of end users really want ActiveX and Java. They want that full capability. I got to get the full video. I got to get the full audio. I got to get full motion. Everything's got to work correctly. That's great. The only problem is the moment that you put ActiveX and Java on your computer system, you're opening up a big hole for someone to be able to get stuff into your system. So I asked my student, when you went to school to learn how to make web pages, were you taught how to, with ActiveX and Java, isolate that information you're pushing down into Windows in a sandboxed area? He said, not only were we taught how to isolate it, we were taught how to bypass the isolation and do a memory leak. So I can move right through the isolation and push data on down to your computer. So if you come to my web page and you want ActiveX and Java, I'll give it to you, but I'm also going to compromise your system by bypassing that, leaking this information into your computer system. Now I've got a backdoor entrance anytime I want to get into your system. I said, how hard is that to do? He said, how hard is it for you to open the door and walk out the door? I said, well, that's pretty easy. He said, so for me, that's what they taught us. They taught us how to do this. Because they also wanted us to make sure that we can protect this from someone being able to do this on our web pages. But you also have to know how to do the attack if you're going to prevent the attack. So the memory leakage is a very easy thing to do. A SQL injection is what we were talking about a little earlier. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Structured Query Language is what we are using for the attack on a database. So the Structured Query Language is used for things such as your Oracle database, your SQL, MySQL, your SQL Server. IBM's got their own. There's all these different databases that we have out there that can handle a SQL injection. So the SQL injection would be if I'm going to use the command of 1 equals 1, which means true. I can use the word blah, B-L-A-H. Blah is also an input which means true. So what we're trying to do is say true for the username, true for the password. That should then show me the entire back end of your database. We could also put in improper input types, placing wrong data types into the fields. So you might be asking for a number. I'm going to put in characters. You might be asking for characters. I'm putting in numbers. This is the improper input types. This may end up getting me kicked to the back end of the program. It could be a stacked query. A stacked query is using the AND command. I would like you to deal me a card from the deck of 52 that is red in color, that's a queen, that's wearing diamonds. How many cards meet that criteria? One, the queen of diamonds. So that would be a stack query. Stack queries have a colon between them. Give me this, colon, this, this, and this, and this. What if I said give me a card that's red or a queen or a diamond? How many cards would you get? Or means the or is between each one of those. So I'm going to end up with 26 cards because I'm going to end up with all the red cards, which will include all the queens that are red and all the diamonds. So I'm going to end up with that many cards. So you start looking at the stack query. The stack query uses the AND command in between with a colon instead of the OR command. So it's going to say it must match this and this and this. Kind of like when you're filling out your dating sites, you have certain criteria, right? I want to date a woman who's got $20 million in the bank, who drives a Porsche, owns her own boat. I mean, I got certain things in life I have to look at. So, yeah. Who's 92 and is ready to die so I can take all our money. No, I would never do that. That would never be. Don't want to ever get married. No. Blind injection. This is an interesting one. I thought this was great when I was taking the ethical hacking class and then teaching it. So with a blind injection, I'm gathering information through the page output changes that happen. What I'm going to do is I don't get to see the output of this, but I can actually watch the change occur. What I can do is I can say, okay, I want to change this and this, and I'm going to put a timer on it that says make the change in 10 seconds. I hit enter, and I go look at your web page. After I've done this, 10 seconds later, I see the page just do a little boop. It just does a little blink. So now I want to really make sure that this happens. So I'm going to go say, let's do the command again, but now let's do it in 20 seconds. So I launch that, and I look back. 20 seconds later, I'll see the page blink, and I go, it's working. So this is my blind injection. I don't see the repercussions of this. I just know that it's because of the little blink that occurs that it actually did take this. Can anybody tell me the difference between an IDS and an IPS? What's that? What is the difference between intrusion detection and intrusion prevention?
Detection will alert you, and prevention will do something.
One is proactive, one is reactive. Which one is proactive, which one is reactive? Intrusion detection is reactive. Intrusion prevention is proactive. When you're coming into an intrusion prevention system, if we see the attack, we just block it right there. Intrusion detection comes back to you and goes, hey, by the way, did you know you're being attacked? Thank you. I think I got that one. When my page went down, yes, I realized I was being attacked. No, intrusion prevention is the proactive one, so it's in line, whereas intrusion detection, the traffic comes down to both your firewall and the IDS at the same time, and it goes, hey, by the way, we can bypass your signatures. So the idea of hiding signatures of the attack from the IDS, I can obfuscate the way that my attack works. And there's about 25 different ways that we can do this to simply say, I'm going to cover up what I normally do, and you're going to let me through. And then once I get through, in about 30 seconds, I'm going to change back to what I had before. So again, we can use timers on this to say, alter what you're doing to come back and launch that attack on the inside. So there's ways that we can set up our traffic and our attack scenarios to bypass my intrusion detection system. We have some other injection techniques. We've got the NoSQL injection, targeting a non-relational database. Most databases that we have are relational. They're going to build from table to table to table, interacting between the different tables. A non-relational database, maybe something like a hierarchical type of thing, where I might have, I don't know, malware. Below malware, I've got worms and Trojans. Underneath the worms, I've got the zero-day attack. So I've got, this is basically building a hierarchy of my different malwares that I have. So that would be one of the databases that we have out there would be built like that. So this would be one of the other injection attacks that we can do, would be attacking a database such as that. When we take a look at something such as Microsoft's Active Directory, when Active Directory came out, they decided to do it as an inverted tree. So at the top, you're going to have something like United States, military. Below that, you're going to have all of your different branches of the military, the Army, the Navy, Marines underneath the Navy, and then the Air Force, Coast Guard. Do we have anybody else? Okay. The new Space Guard. Space, what is it? Space Force? Space Patrol. Sounds like a comic series that's about to come out. But yeah, it's going to happen. So yes, we're going to have people up in space looking down, and it'll work. So you start thinking about the way that we have set up our database with this. In Windows environment, they use something called the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP. So LDAP is going to have a lot of information about you, and it's built in this hierarchical format, which is going to basically say, oh, here's Eric, he's in the United States, and he's in the Army, and here's his location, he's over at Fort Meade, and here's his MOS. So you go through this whole thing, and it's basically going to show me the hierarchy of where you are. So the LDAP is going to have a lot of information about you. It's going to have things like your extension number for your phone. It's going to have which building you're in, which floor you're on. It's going to have some personal information, your home address, your home phone number, your spouse's name, your kid's name. It may even go on and have some information about your health. Are there certain things in the LDAP directory you don't want shared with anybody else? Your home address, your home phone number, all of that. So there's certain things in there that we want to be able to limit what you have access to. So LDAP injection is going to target the network directory services so that we can liberate that information and share it with everybody. Some of the other databases that we have an XML database. If you think about anybody been out to either United web page or the Southwest Airlines web page? Can I do something besides get a flight booked on that web page? What else can I do?
You can use your points or your credit card.
Okay. Anything else I can rent while I'm there?
Hotel.
I can get a hotel reservation and a car reservation. Do I need to re-authenticate for any of that? No. This is called a federated page. Part of the federation is that you're using XML as one of the protocols. We're going to see this coming up a little bit later on. We use SAML and SOAP as some of the other protocols that are in there. So when you take a look at XML injection, what we're trying to do is get to that back-end database that you got there. Command injection, targeting remote command shells. We want to try to get into your computer through a remote command shell. This is also what they're trying to do when they put that ad up on TV that says, is your computer running slow? Because what they want you to do is go out to their web page the moment you connect to their web page and say, I want you to find out what's wrong with my computer. They're putting a remote command shell on your system. They're coming back into your system saying, I want to be able to now connect into your system anytime that I want. So we look at that command injection. That means they can get into my system. They can launch the commands that they want, which means that they can access pretty much anything that they want inside of my system. We can do a DLL injection. A DLL is a dynamic link library. Many of your programs, now you mentioned that you programmed in a lot of different languages, correct? Did you ever go back into a DLL library for some of the things you needed? Could I go into your DLL library and pull your DLLs out and put my own in there that made your program become mine? Would you even know that I did this? Probably not. So this is a great way of being able to get into somebody's system and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to come into your system. I'm going to change your DLLs. You're going to just go ahead and pretend like nothing ever happened, or you don't even know that anything happened. You're going to run your programs. You're going to go to your DLL library and pull in my DLLs, which now give me backdoor access into your system. So if you haven't protected your library, that means somebody can go in and do a DLL injection and take over your system. So it's very scary when you start thinking about this. Kind of like when you were born and somebody comes in and swaps you for somebody else. That's not supposed to happen. Welcome to the DLL injection. That's exactly what they're doing. Let's swap out your good stuff and put in something different. I'm sorry, those weren't really your parents. Oh God, really? No wonder I don't look like any of them. Yeah, it's one of those things that we always look at. So that's your SQL injection. Client side. When we start thinking about the client side, you are sitting there. When I go out to a web page, if I'm going out to Amazon, how does that work? I go up into my browser, I type in what? www.amazon.com. I hit enter. What is Amazon doing? I'm using the get command that says go get the web page and bring it down. Are they pushing a whole bunch of stuff down to me? I asked for it. Yes, please bring that down to my system. Could there be vulnerabilities in that application that's being pushed on down to me? Depending on what program they're using to write their application, and yeah, it could be CGI, it could be pushing all sorts of stuff down to my workstation and pushing all that stuff on there, and you're just kind of going, I wonder if this is secure. I'm going to tell it if I want to be using Flash to get more sound and audio and video, if I want to use any of the other commands like ActiveX or Java. So these are some of the things I have to be concerned about on my system because someone could be pushing stuff on down to me. It could be a browser add-on. It could be that somebody's decided that, we want to enhance your browser. We're going to make it exploitable. We're going to add some malicious code onto this thing. So those are some of the concerns. I noticed that every time I go to Amazon, it pops back up and it goes, hey, Eric, I noticed last time you were here, you bought this, this, and this. How do they know that? I have not logged in yet, but they know who I am. Why? What have they left on my system? They didn't even offer to share the cookies with me. Here, Eric, are you hungry? You want some cookies? No. They push the cookies on my system, so every time they come in, they go, we already know a lot about you. Is there a tool out there that will take my cookies off? Anybody know what it's called? What is it? Well, no, cross-site request forwarding is stealing my cookies, but is there a tool that can remove my cookies? It's called CC Cleaner. CC Cleaner will remove all your cookies. It'll remove any history files you have. Send them out to CC Cleaner, and then they'll charge you $25 a month not to share that information with it. No, I'm just kidding. CC Cleaner is great. You run CC Cleaner on your system. It's going to wipe all the cookies out. It's going to take care of any history that you've been into. So anything that's stored on your system will be gone. So it's a great way of, at the end of a session for the day, getting rid of all of that stuff. We also have something called the LSO, which is the local shared objects. These are flash cookies. These are different than cookies, and they are stored and removed differently. We are always concerned that somebody's pushing some sort of an attachment down on my system. Should I just go ahead and open any attachment that my friends send me? Yeah, only if I want my system to crash on me all the time. So one of the concerns that we always have are attachments. Do we know where the attachment came from? Was this really attached by one of my good friends on here? So I always look at that and I always ask myself that question, is this something that I want to open? Should I take it to an isolated system and open it on the isolated system? That's what I would do. Because that way, if it opens and launches an attack, it's going to bring down the isolated system and not my entire network. So that's one of the concerns that we have. We have something called cross-site scripting. Now, when we think about scripting, has anybody here ever opened up the web page to take a look at what's inside what makes your web page? You can actually go out to a web page and then you can right-click on it. You say, I want to copy this, and then you can bring it up in Word or some other programs. It's going to show you what was used to create the web page. So you have little brackets in there that look like this with the word script in there. So it's the greater than and less than with the word script beginning and ending. And you'll see all this stuff in between, and this is what it's executing. If I want to do a cross-site script, if I want to launch an attack against you, I'm going to take your web page and I'm going to drop a new script in the middle of this. Begins and ends with the word script, and I'm going to tell it to do something different. Grab some information and send it to me. How easy is it for me to do this? Well, I can go out to your web page. I can copy your web page. I can put my script in there, and I can push the web page back out. If you have not locked your web page, this will take over, which means that when somebody goes into that web page, it's going to do something it's not supposed to do. It's going to do what I scripted it to do, which says go grab $1 million out of your bank account and send it to my Cayman account. Why would I send this to my Cayman account? Matthew's looking at me like, how come you're not sharing your Cayman account with me? So why would I send it to my Cayman account? Bill, why do I have an account in Cayman Islands? Laxed banking laws. Any other reasons? No extradition. I can't say that really loud because somebody might hear me say no extradition. Oh, and I might get myself in trouble. So one of the very first books I read on hacking, the guy who wrote the book was a programmer on a mainframe. So he did COBOL. COBOL is used by most banks. One of the things he wrote in his scripting, if my name is ever removed, take $1 million and send it over to the following account, which happens to be in the Cayman Islands. So he had already flown out to Cayman. He loved the islands. He's got himself a bank account. And he just wrote this script inside of the program. He finds out about a year later that he's getting fired, and he's just kind of laughing, going, okay, I'll go to the Cayman Islands and see if it works. He got to the Cayman Islands, his balance jumped from $22 to $1,022. This was in the 1960s. Could he live like a king in the 1960s in Grand Cayman off $1 million? He could have lived like a king off $100,000 back then. You could buy beachfront property for $50,000. So he's going to live like a king. So the FBI is brought in because it's banking fraud, and they look at this. How are they going to get this guy home? Where do they need to send him? Because they want to arrest him and they want to get their money back. But how do they get him home? They took pictures of his mom and put her picture into a hospital bed and said she was, had tubes running into her arm and said she was dying and she'll be alive for another 4 days. And this is an email from your sister. Come see your mom. So what does he do? He jumps on a plane and flies into Florida to go see his mom. Who's waiting for him? Yeah, the FBI. They never got their money back. It's still sitting in the Cayman Islands. It's probably up to $80 million now in interest. But, you look at that and go, I wonder if we can go get the money. They won't release the money. They'd rather leave it there. So you start thinking about some of the ways we can do cross-site scripting. We are dropping commands inside. It could be stored, it could be persistent. The script is uploaded as permanent content. It could be non-persistent because it's temporarily placed in an error field. So it's reflected into that error field, meaning that if somebody were able to look at this, it's not going to stay there forever, whereas the stored and persistent is uploaded permanently. Could be DOM-based, runs entirely in the client browser. It's not going to be running in the web page itself. It's only in the browser itself. Okay, we got some questions for you. An attack on your web application began with a long string of numbers sent to a field that only was supposed to hold a 4-digit variable. What kind of attack was this? That is a buffer overflow. What application attacks directly targets the database program sitting behind a web server? Yep. So it's going to be your SQL injection and your XML injection. What SQL injection technique relies on unfiltered semicolons? That's the stacked query, because remember you're saying I want this and this and this, and you've got the semicolons in between. Blocking and cleaning Flash cookies is much the same as for any other browser cookies. That is false because the flash cookies are LSOs rather than normal browser cookies. They're stored in a different location and cleaned by a different process. Did you get caught up on your other questions? The answers to all the other questions while you were out? Or did you want me to go through the other question?
Oh, no, that's
You're good? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What cross-site scripting techniques don't require anything to actually be stored on the target server? So the DOM-based is stored on your local browser, whereas the reflective attack is going to be your non-persistent. So those are not stored on the server. What application vulnerability can be exploited by providing a series of normal data inputs with a specific sequence and timing? This is known as a race condition. Usually this is how it happens, is that you've got data coming down to your CPU. The data's been checked. The CPU is waiting for the next cycle to begin. So we have something called the time of check versus time of use. And there's a little bit of time in there where we can go ahead and exploit that moment to alter the data before it's being used again. So that would be a race condition. So in this chapter, we took a look at a few things. We took a look at how to categorize the attackers by motivation and resources. We looked at some common types of social engineering, their underlying mechanisms, and how to protect against them. We took a look at how to identify malware according to its payload and transmission vector, as well as how malware hides from detection. We also looked at some of the common network attacks, including our probes, our spoofing, our redirection, denial of service, password cracking, eavesdropping, man in the middle, and wireless. And finally, we looked at the web applications. We looked at some injection, some overflow, and some scripting techniques. Well, I have some good news and some bad news. What would you like first? Bad news is we're at the end of the chapter. Or would that be the good news? What's the good news? My next chapter is one of my favorites, cryptography. What's that? Oh, we're going to start it today. We have an hour and 20 minutes left, right? We're supposed to go to. What time do you normally go to, Matthew?
I was thinking until about 4.
Till 4?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I'll just give an introduction to cryptography, then we'll be done for the day. I have a propensity to get in trouble with a lot of my instructors. I was in Mrs. Landry's 7th grade science class, and I turned in my science project. My science project was a nice blank piece of paper. It had on the top of it my name, the date, Mrs. Landry, and it said science project. And the whole piece of paper was blank, empty. So I turn this in, and she looks at this, and she says, "Is this a joke?" No, not a joke. She said, "This is your science project." I said, "It is." She said, "There's nothing here." Oh, ye of little faith. There was something on here. How many of you seen the movie National Treasure? How did they hide things on the back of the document? What's that? Invisible ink. It's exactly what I used on the back of my piece of paper. But I used something called sugar water, and it took me about 12 attempts to finally make it so that it didn't wrinkle the paper. Because when you put water on paper, when it dries, it wrinkles. So I had to figure out that if you stack 22 phone books, we're talking about big, thick phone books, on top of this, while it's drying, then it doesn't leave the little wrinkles on it. So she's looking at it, go, "There's nothing here." So I walk over and I take out some water and I fill up the cup with water and I reach in my pocket and I take out some matches and I light the whole pack of matches on fire. And I pick this up and I do this. What am I doing?
Heating it.
Heating it up so the message comes out. I take the pack of matches, I drop it in the water. Mrs. Landry is freaking out. "What are you doing? Oh my God, you're going to burn down the building. It was built in 1903. It's all wood." I went, there's water here to put it out. Relax. See, now there's a message. This is how I did this. She goes, come with me. And she grabs me, grabs the paper, grabs my ear, and drags me to the principal's office. Not the first time I've been to Mr. Gillis's office. She sits me down. Mr. Gillis looks at me and goes, let me get something straight there, Eric. Are you telling me that before you heated this thing up, there was not a single thing on this piece of paper other than what you put in ink up here? I said, that's true. And he goes, so you applied heat to this, and this message popped up that told us how you did this. I said, yeah, that's correct. He went, well, damn. Now, Mrs. Landry is yelling at him, going, get him out of here. I want him suspended for 3 weeks. And Mr. Gillis is going, one moment. And now Mr. Gillis was my advisor for the Boy Scouts, for my badges. And he goes, this is a badge. And he reaches down, he gives me the science badge for doing this. He goes, this is great. She goes ballistic. She's yelling and screaming at me. I want him suspended. Mr. Gillis is great. He's going, don't worry. He's going to be suspended. He's going home for 3 days. Okay, Eric, while you're home for 3 days, I want you working on your photography badge. So we had talked about this before. Here's all the materials I got for you, right? She's going crazy. Really? He's going to go home and work on this? Thus, my introduction to cryptography. We're going to take a look at some of the introduction types of cryptography. So I'm going to jump you over to the other screen here real quick, if I can remember how to do this. I think I click on that one and that one. And there it is. I like this. Okay. So let's start off by taking a look at cryptography. Love the fact that it just moves to another new page just like that. So we're going to take a look at a couple of symmetric algorithms. There are 2 symmetric algorithms out there, and one of them is called substitution. Substitution, good enough. Okay, so if we take the alphabet and we shift this to the right by 3 characters and start the alphabet again. This is also known as the Caesar cipher. When Caesar would put together his orders for his generals out in the field, he would go ahead and take the orders that he wanted. He would then go ahead and substitute, shift to the right by 3 characters. It could be a shift to the left by 7 characters. It didn't matter. The key went along with the runners. So he would always go ahead and create 3 documents that were identical. He would have 3 different runners taking different routes from his location to the generals that were out there. Why 3 different runners taking 3 different routes? One is bound to make it. What do we call that these days? Redundancy. Thank you. If you look that up in the dictionary, what's it say? If you look up redundancy in the redundant in the dictionary, if you looked it up, what would it say under its definition? It would say see redundant. So they put you in a nice circle there. So when you think about what they did is they would attach the message to the right leg of the runner, meaning shift to the right. Then they would have this beautifully ordained belt that they would wear, and there would be a certain number of knots on it, which would be 3 knots in this case, shift to the right by 3. If the 7 knots and the runner were holding this on their left leg, then it would be shift to the left by 7. So these are how they sent the key along with the message. Okay. The second one that we have is something called transposition. So in transposition, let's just take a message such as, welcome to the security class. And I'm also going to use a +3 because we shifted to the right by 3. I'm going to use a +3 on this one. So I'm coming down here and writing welcome to security class. It helps if you spell things correctly. Okay? So how am I going to write this? I'm going to write this as WCETSULTSEOTHERELMOECICS with a plus 3 at the end. The reason I put the plus 3 at the end is because I want to be able to decrypt it. I'm going to say I've got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 25 characters. So 25 divided by the number 3 tells me I've got 8 characters per line plus 1 extra character. So it's 8 plus 1. The 1 is known as a modulus, which can also be used for cryptography. I just want to make sure I got the right number here. 9, 12, 15, 18, 20, 24. Yes. So it tells me I've got 8 per line, except I've got plus a 1, which means that plus 1 tells me there's 1 extra character in the top line. So let's count out 9 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now let's count out 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is going to come underneath here. This guy's going to go underneath there. And then we can rebuild our message that way. So why do we look at the symmetric algorithms with substitution and transposition? If I were to take your entire message that I'm going to send you, I'm going to chop this thing up. Then I'm going to go take that message and I'm going to do this to encrypt it. What am I going to do to decrypt it? Take it in the opposite direction. Okay. So we use a combination of substitution and transposition to encrypt your message and then bring it back the other way to decrypt it. The problem that we have with symmetric is that it is the fastest. This is not a problem. It's the fastest of the two between symmetric and asymmetric. It's much faster. It's 1,000 times faster. The problem is I have to be able to get you the key. In this case, the key was plus 3. In both of these, I shifted to the right by 3, and here I was going 3 characters down as I moved across. I have to get that key somehow to you. So if my key happens to be 3 characters, so I'm going to use int, A-N-T, all lowercase. How many choices do I have if I just use lowercase for each one of these characters? How many choices do I have in the first character? 26 choices, right? Lowercase. How many for the second character? 26. How many for the third character? Same thing. 26 times 26 times 26 is not a real big number. You'll eventually figure out what the key is. What if I choose to use uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and numbers? How many choices do I have there? 77. So 77 times 77 times 77, a much bigger number. This is known as the key space. The larger the key space, the better it is. What if I tell you that your key is 32 characters and they're all uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and numbers? That's going to be 32 raised to the 77th power. That's a lot. That's a big set of numbers. It's going to take a while for you to break that. Okay? That is our introduction. You like this? It's right at 4 o'clock there. This is our introduction to cryptography. We'll start with chapter 3 tomorrow morning at 05:30 Pacific Standard Time. You like that? Gotcha.
That's a 0.
Actually, I'm sorry. It's Pacific Daylight Time.
Eastern Standard Time, guys.
Okay. For those who want to start practicing some of your questions, you are welcome to take home a laptop. Let me show you what you need to do in the laptop to do this. It's pretty easy. The laptops that are here and then over in the far box closest to the door are taken care of. There's 4 laptops that are sitting on the chair over there. I haven't put the extra questions on there yet. So what you want to do on your desktop, let me jump back over to this. I want that one and that one. Is that right? No, I want that one and I want that one. There we go. My question or my concern would be that you're not going to have enough time unless you take these laptops home and start looking at questions today. So if you're planning on testing out on Friday and you want to start getting a leg up on this, here's what you want to do. Right up here on the desktop, you see something that says CYS, CYO 501 with a date 2/12/2019. Double click that. It's going to go find the VCE player, which is what it brought up here. I'm going to go ahead and just click Start. And it's going to say I have 385 questions to go through. If I just start with the new questions, I can just go ahead and say, okay. It's going to start down here with Begin, and I can start going through the questions. So right here it's telling me with the new questions, there are 216. The way I would go through these questions, you have new questions and old questions. Which ones would you do first? I'd be doing the new questions. Why? Because more of what you're going to see on the test will be the new questions. So what you want to look at is the new questions that are out there. So if you can get through the new questions twice before Friday and then go through the old questions once, then you should be okay with that. You should be able to get all the way through that. So once you come in and you just click on an answer, you can come back and say Show Answer. It'll show you the correct answer. Okay. And at the end, it'll give you a grade. You want at least 80% to pass. And I put a couple other files up there. Some of the hands-on files are things like the performance-based questions that we have. So don't share this with anybody, but this question showed up on all my students' questions 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago. So this would be one of the questions that you want to make sure that you take a look at. So here's another question. That one did not show up. Here we go. Here's a good question for you. We're trying to figure out, is this whaling, hoaxing, fishing, farming, or farming? The attacker gains confidential company information from targeted CEO and board members. What is that? That is whaling, yes. The next one, the attacker posts a link to a fake antivirus software going through multiple social networks, a broad set of victims. What would this be? It's a hoax. Why? Because it's a fake AV, antivirus program. Okay. The attacker's going to collect credit cards over a phone-based system. What would that be? Vishing, so phishing with a V. The next one, the attacker mass mails product information to parties that already opted out of receiving advertisements. They are sending this to a broad set of recipients. Spamming. How many of you eat spam from Hawaii? Excellent. Good stuff. As long as you mask it with all sorts of other things. Actually, no, it's actually very tasty. And finally, the attacker is going to redirect the name resolution entries from a legitimate site to a fraudulent site. This is actually farming. Yeah, so I'm moving you from the legitimate site over to the fraudulent site, saying this other one's no good. So actually, those are 2 of the 5 questions. You like that? You've already seen 2 of the questions that you're going to get. You didn't see them from me. So those are on some of the systems that we have. So if you go through those, they're called the performance-based questions. So another one on here that is called the WAP performance. You'll get that one as well. It's wireless access point. So go through that one as well. So if you want to take a laptop, please, there is another sheet right here. If you would just go ahead and put a check mark next to your name if you want a laptop. You can grab the laptops over here or in the far box. You can take a power supply for that. And you probably want to know what the password is to get in.